Harrison Phillips has been traded to the New York Jets. Why would they do this? What would it mean? And what comes next? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new, going live today here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. So thank you to my hashtag everydayers who are here. And for everybody else who is listening afterwards, you can, of course, always catch anything that goes live on Locked On Vikings later on YouTube, and the audio will be up at the normal time on the podcast feed. So if you're listening to that, welcome in. But if you are here and you are live, I'm here. I got a chat. I can respond to you if we want to talk this out, because the big news is that Harrison Phillips has been traded to the New York Jets. The Vikings, in return, get 2 6th-round picks. They send Harrison Phillips and a 7th the other way. The 6th-7th swap is in, I think, 2027. So they get basically a 6th-round pick and a whatever for Harrison Phillips. They also are going to take on a little bit of the money, but not a ton of it. They still save, I think, like something close to like $4 million this year, and then $7.5 million next year. And Harrison Phillips is no longer part of the Vikings. That's the raw details of the trade. Somebody actually brought up a pretty good point in discussing this, which is, you know, if the Vikings cut Harrison Phillips next year, they would still save the lion's share of the money. They would still save that $7.5 million. This way, they save a little more. They get a draft pick, but they don't get him for the entire 2025 season. So a lot of people, and you guys in the chat are already saying, is it a Taki thing? Is it an LDR thing? I think you're on the right track, but you're naming the wrong guy. And that is into like the why they would do this part of it. Another thing to mention that is, because it is after June 1st, some of the prorated bonus is still going to be a dead cap hit next year. So the 7.5 mil they save, I believe, is like total. I think that's like a net cap savings, but there's going to be like a little dead cap charge on the thing on all the websites next year that you should be aware of. Okay. So Jalen Redmond is I think the reason that you do this, but here's the thing. It's a value thing. It's not about making the Vikings better. And that's what bugs me. I get this move. I don't think I like it, but I want to give you the argument without my own opinion in it too much to start. I'll just give you what I think the argument would be if you gave Kwesi truth serum and you told him what was up. Harrison Phillips has been a good run defender, but not really that active in the pass rush. I personally have been fine with that. I think that's fine. He's a nose tackle. How many people's nose? There's like 3 nose tackles in the league that are like pass rush guys. That's the job. But okay, so he's not like that big of a pass rush guy. And the Vikings, like, entire offseason defensively has been aimed at getting better interior pass rush. Last year, Jonathan Bullard, Harrison Phillips were not the guys that were making those big splash plays. They were all just trying to soak up doubles and let the edges cook. And that didn't work every time. The edges have a longer path. You can get the ball out more quickly. So that's part of it, right? The other part is that they have a lot of defensive tackles. So there were actually a lot of questions in the mailbag just that I did just this Tuesday that was, are they going to trade a defensive tackle? What about, Jalen Redmond for this receiver, or Jalen Redmond for this draft pick and then that draft pick for a receiver? What if they kind of found a way to take their surplus position and make it help their deficit position, right? And it's a very like fantasy football way of thinking. Oh, I got too many running backs. I need a receiver. Let's find somebody with the opposite situation and make a trade. But I think you guys are kind of right. I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. They're going to take that 6th-round pick next year. I don't think this was just, we want a 6th-round pick and we don't, and we think that, your average Gavin Bartholomew is worth more than Harrison Phillips. That's not really how these trades go down. There's an economics to it. There's only one. If they had already decided that they were going to cap casualty Harrison Phillips next year, which it's very possible that they could have done that. There was no guaranteed salary left and they would save a bunch of money, and they have a cap crunch next year. They're now, after this trade, still projected to be like 60 mil over. So they still have action to take. So it's part of that, right? You help relieve that problem. And if they had decided that they are going to do that, then they're really trading 1 year of team control for 4 years of a young player. That value of like how, veterans compare to rookies is like hard to define, but that's like how that's the logic, right? But a lot of it has to do with Jalen Redmond, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, who, by the way, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins has had a couple of really nice preseason games, a ton of buzz locally. You'll never hear about this guy nationally because that's just not how national media works. But like locally, I think just about every reporter has had some kind of aside in a notebook or tweet or something that's like, hey, by the way, they all love this TID guy and he's in with the ones a bunch, and that's not a coincidence. So with those guys being, I think, the primary two young dudes, Levi Drake Rodriguez and Taki Taimani and Elijah Williams, I think are fighting for those third team spots. And if you think about like two defensive tackles now, you have Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. Your second team is Jalen Redmond and Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, and your third team is a competition. Pick two of those three. And then in your base sets where you have 3 D tackles, you put one of Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins or Jalen Redmond into the rotation, depending on what you need from the rep. That's how I think this works on the inside. But the other thing that I think that they could do is Dallas Turner. There has been quite a lot of buzz about a 3 edge rusher package. And the question that was hard to answer about that was, okay, what is the rest of the personnel on that like? Is that an only third down thing where you don't have any defensive tackles in? If you are taking a defensive tackle out, which one is it? And I guess the answer to that question was Harrison Phillips. He's the guy that comes out. And hey, look, if Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen are better pass rushers, Harrison Phillips might have been coming off the field quite a bit more anyways. So maybe his value to them was a little bit lower. All of this is to say, I'm here like my opinion on this. I don't love it, because I don't think it makes the Vikings better, right? I don't think a 6th round pick makes the Vikings better than a year of Harrison Phillips does. I just don't think that the value in that is correct. But that's not how Kwesi views it. And it's probably the central thing, like difference in the way that Kwesi thinks versus the way that I think, which is Kwesi thinks in value, right? He thinks, well, yeah, but the value of getting $10 million over 2 years and a 6th round pick is more than what we're losing in the difference between Harrison Phillips and like putting in Jalen Redmond in there sometimes. Like he's thinking in that way. But for me, I'm about, okay, how is that $10 million in 6th round pick going to make up the difference in losing a starting defensive tackle? And put it this way. Let's say instead of a trade, the news today was Harrison Phillips tore his Achilles and is out for the year. That would harm the Vikings in some way, right? What would they do? They would start these other people. They would probably approach it the exact same way. How much worse do you think they would get? And what is that worth? And to me, I just don't think they got enough back for that to happen. So this is not a move that I love. And I liked Harrison Phillips a lot. I think he was pretty constantly underrated by people who only cared about pass rush and, looked at box scores and said he doesn't get a lot of sacks. Why is this guy so good? But that nose tackle job is so important to finish, like that stop the run job, that 2-gap job, especially in the Brian Flores defense, which very often has 2 high safeties. That means you are gapped out. That means you have one, or you're not gapped out. You have one fewer guy than you need in the box. Somebody needs to handle 2 gaps. None of this works without a guy who can successfully do that. And he was good at that job. So I'm not quite sure what is, what's coming up next. But the fact of the matter is that the Vikings had 8 defensive tackles that you could roster. 8. Including Elijah Williams and Taki Taimani and Levi Drake Rodriguez. And I do think 1 or maybe even 2 of those guys won't make the roster, but you could roster any of those guys and feel pretty good about it. So this is to me a little bit of we have a surplus. Let's try to make value out of it. And value doesn't win Super Bowls. Players do. So that's why I am going to be a little more critical of this move. However, it might not be over. The Vikings might be taking this 6th round pick and this money or whatever and shooting it out back into the market and trying to get a wide receiver back. There's been that rumor as well. We have to talk about that. And then also a little bit about who takes over. And I am going to speak a little bit on Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins and also just take a few of your thoughts from the chat because you guys have a lot of thoughts. So I want to make sure that there is time for all of that. It'll all be next on Locked On Vikings. Moving on. with this Locked On Vikings podcast after I tell you that this episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It is fantasy football season. We're in the preseason. That means it's time to start setting up your drafts. Everything that I'm doing this year in fantasy football will be via Yahoo Fantasy, from your regular redraft leagues, or if you're a first timer or you're making your millionth league and you're trying to look for a way to spice things up, Yahoo Fantasy is the place to go. You can do all kinds of things. You can set up your own scoring. You can do totally degenerate stuff on Yahoo. The infamous Hell League is done on Yahoo Fantasy, where you can make like custom rules for kickers and like how many field goal yards. And it's like ridiculous punt returns, like whatever you want, throw in a safety. You can do anything from that to like a much more normal thing. The app is smooth and easy to use, easy to access, and get that last minute waiver claim in or last minute ad drop without worrying that, it's 11:59 and the app is loading. You don't have to worry about any of that. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Moving on here, the Locked On Vikings podcast. So that's the bare bones of what's going on. So here's what I did just this morning. I released a video about Tyrion Ingram Dawkins on my Patreon page, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. If you want to watch that, it's about a half hour long, and it goes over what I think are the most instructive Tyrion Ingram Dawkins reps. It looks pretty good. It's not quite as dominant as Jalen Redmond was. And I might do a Jalen Redmond video now in the light of this news, because he gets a much bigger role here. But it's not, it's a little bit more subtle, but it's really good. It's just, you're seeing the right techniques. You're seeing what you want to see out of a rookie. Jalen Redmond was, oh my God, he's like a nuclear bomb in the middle of this and nobody can block him. This is a step above. But for Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, it's not quite that, but it's still very good. And I think the idea that Ingram Dawkins and Jalen Redmond can be this sort of rotational Jerry Tillery between the two of them, it's a little Moneyball, it's a little recreating somebody in the aggregate. But I think there are a couple of key questions that I want to pose here, that a couple of worries that I have. And I've seen this in the chat a little bit too. People talking about the running backs that they're going to have to take, that they're going to have to, put in somebody like Taki Taimani more. A lot of people have expressed concern about the size thing here. So the sizes, let me pull up the sizes, because the sizes of these D tackles has been a thing for the Vikings a little bit. They've had undersized in the interior for a while when they were, relying on guys like Jerry Tillery or whatever. The biggest player on their defense right now that Harrison Phillips wasn't even. The biggest player right now is Travis Bell. He is probably not making the team. I know Pete Burcich said he was kind of his guy, so I guess we'll keep an eye on it. But right now he's running with the fours. And then it's Taki Taimani at 309. Javon Hargrave is 305. And Jonathan Allen is listed at a clean 300. I always get a little bit spooked when you're listed at exactly 300. Jalen Redmond's 291. Levi Drake Rodriguez is 290, but hopefully gaining. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins is 276. He's like a tweener type. And the rest of these guys are like tweener types. Elijah Williams or whoever are tweener types. So in terms of there's nobody over 310. They don't have that 330-pound big monster dude. And Harrison Phillips wasn't that either, but he was one of the bigger ones. So are we losing out on size? Are we prioritizing speed over size? And if we are, is that wise? And are we doing it too much? This is the concern that I have. And I just go back to thinking about look, if I'm going to go up against the Vikings use a lot of odd fronts, and they will probably use a lot more of their base package to keep guys like Javon Hargrave out of, and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins out of double teams. Neither of those guys are great at double teams, though I do think Ingram Dawkins and Javon Hargrave play about the same role and will replace each other a lot. I don't know how much you get them on the field together unless you're really looking for speed. Maybe there's like a game plan reason to do that. But if you want to do that, you kind of can't get both those guys doubled. Those guys aren't that kind of player. Javon Hargrave really struggled last year before he got hurt. So because he only played a couple games, but in those games, and the one against the Vikings in particular, I mean, he got sledded by Garrett Bradbury and Blake Brandel. I mean, sledded. I mean, 10 yards down the field, right? Multiple times. And it happened to him in other games as well. So I don't want him being the guy taking a double at the point of attack. Javon Hargrave, the point of him is single him up on some overmatched guard and let him cook. And Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins did that in the preseason game, in particular against the Patriots, and against the Patriots ones really, really well. You've all seen the Garrett Bradbury rep, right? Where he just takes Garrett Bradbury right up off of that wide stance and puts him into the turf. That one was awesome, but there was one against the guard, I think it was Onwenu, where he just steps to the side really well. I'm not going to give you everything that was in the Patreon video. Go watch it from a much more comprehensive analysis, but I'll give you one that kind of kept coming up, which were the slants or the slashes, whatever you want to call them. But essentially that means, I'm on your left and I've got to get to your right. And, with that first step. So it's that hard lateral first step. And it's really nice with Ingram-Dawkins, who gets just a little bit of depth with it. You want to still get a little depth. You want to make some forward progress, even though you're mostly trying to get lateral. And he gets that little bit of depth, and he does that step quickly enough where basically nobody on either one of the Texans or Patriots offensive lines could keep up with him, and he would always be able to get into the gap he was supposed to get into. Would he get penetration and get up through? That kind of depends on the second and third step, and O-linemen can sort of stifle you there, but you're in your gap, you're where you're supposed to be, and the running back sees your purple jersey and now has to bounce out to somewhere else. You've done your job. So I'm really happy about that, and I like Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins as a role player. He ain't going to be Jonathan Allen. He ain't going to be the guy that you put everything in on. He's not like a, Pro Bowl superstar. That's not what we're talking about here, but more that putting him in on the field on a 5-man surface. He's going to be singled up. He's going to be able to beat that block frequently enough where it's going to be worth your while to do so. And I think a lot of this is, for Jalen Redmond is true to a more extreme degree, where now I get a little excited about what Jalen Redmond can do against a guard. I get the most excited about what Jonathan Allen or Javon Hargrave can do. Those guys have made long careers out of cooking overmatched guards when they get singled up. But even Jalen Redmond, I think, can get some wins and really make some disruptions. So I think that's what it is. And then if you really want, I think this is maybe the best news for Taki Taimani, who I think was looking at getting cut, but played well enough last year to, I think, earn himself some goodwill, and he's a bigger body. If it's 3rd and 1 and you need somebody up there, you put him there. He is now the biggest dude on your active roster, unless you decide to roster Travis Bell. So he's the biggest guy. So that's what I am thinking about with this. The other angle is wide receiver. And I asked you guys on both Blue Sky and Discord about what wide receivers could be out there that the Vikings could trade for. That's another thing. Tom Pelissero and everybody else reported that the Vikings are actively on the market. That tells me that the Vikings went to him and said, please tell everyone we are on the market, right? That is a big, giant, we are buying sign. It's you might as well walk into a car dealership with your wallet hanging on your belt. Vultures, please circle me. So we'll see what's out there. And I've got a few ideas that I want to go over. That's going to be what we do at the end of the show. But you guys are popping off in chat, and I want to make sure that I talk to you guys about some of that. Kelsey asks, did he get proper value? My thought is probably not. I talked about that earlier in the show, if you want to rewind. Magic says you have to assume Flores was okay with the deal too. I think so. And I think that is what I've been talking about. It's okay. The depth will make this fine. He is an extraneous piece. He's a luxury, and let's convert our luxury into liquid assets. I think a lot of people in this chat seem just kind of sad because he's a nice guy. And I should mention that he's a very likable dude. Work in the community was amazing. Teammates love him, captain stuff. That's a bummer, especially to lose that at this point. It's one thing when everybody goes their separate ways in the off season, but guys got to know him, right? He worked with rookies and stuff. That's a little bit tougher. A lot of you are just guessing LDR, Taki Taimani. Levi Drake Rodriguez is smaller. So if you're worried about size, you have to basically be Team Taki. And I don't think that that's an unreasonable take at all. But we'll see exactly how the run defense changes. And especially if you are a team that can run out of nickel, get or run out of 11 personnel. So you get defenses nickel packages. If you can run there, you'll maybe be able to get some smaller bodies onto the Vikings defensive line and maybe be able to take advantage of that. But the wide receiver talk, some of you guys are already giving me your guesses, and we'll see who ends up being right, because I do think somebody is going to join the Vikings, but we will do all the speculation in the world next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Monarch Money. If you've ever looked at your bank account and been surprised, look, you're not alone. Most people can't even name all their financial accounts. A lot of people don't keep budgets or really track what's going on until they got to go pay some bills and they realize that they're either way further ahead or they oversaved. And you don't want to live that way. Don't leave money on the table. That's what Monarch Money is for. It does all the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can link your investments, your bank account, your spending habits, and even joint accounts all in one easy place so that everybody involved can stay up to date and there's never any confusion. Once again, that is with Monarch Money. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. So a lot of you have suggested maybe I should start with this. This is going to be the part where we talk about wide receivers. So here's the situation. Justin Jefferson is practicing again, coming back from his hamstring. They're bringing him back up to speed. They have a bye next week. He's got plenty of time. He'll play week 1, barring a setback. Jordan Addison out 3 weeks and back. You have full clarity on that, but you're going to have to figure out something in the meantime. Jalen Naylor, kind of the opposite. He might not miss week 1, but you don't have clarity on that. And the fact that the Vikings are looking at trading for a wide receiver tells us that they maybe have a little more clarity than we do on it, and that the news isn't good. So that he's going to miss some amount of time. Kevin O'Connell has called him week to week. God only knows what that means. That doesn't tell me he's going to miss half the season, but that does tell me he's going to miss some meaningful playing time, right? You also had a couple other guys get banged up in practice today, although it's not Ty Felton got some kind of dinger, but but Kevin Seifert reported that he's fine. So they're looking for wide receivers. Pelissero has said the Vikings are on the wide receiver market. When it's one of those big guys, it usually isn't coming from anywhere but the team. That's not a leak. That's a sales pitch. So who's it going to be? That's the question. Now, this has never been my strong suit. I'm not the kind of guy that has every depth chart in the league memorized and know who's on it. Like you got to ask like a fantasy football person, right? Who knows where all the skill players are. Some, super degenerate deep dynasty league guy that knows who wide receiver 5 on the Raiders is. But that's why I asked for some suggestions. What do we want to do? And of course, by far the most common one by a million miles is Adam Thielen. Is Adam Thielen returning to the Vikings? Are they looking to trade for Adam Thielen? It's super hard for me to imagine. I know Matthew Collar has gone on his show and sort of said that this is not just like wish casting, but it's still really difficult for me to imagine that actually coming to fruition. The idea is the Panthers have had Adam Thielen. He's been big for Bryce Young, but they have 2 first-round picks consecutively at wide receiver in Tet McMillan and Xavier Legette. Those 2 guys are supposed to be 1 and 2, and that leaves Thielen as this sort of odd man out. Maybe you could get him for cheap. But here's why I don't really love that. Relying on youth, even if it's expensive youth, first-round pick youth, when you have a young quarterback who is still very much developing and you're still hoping for steps forward from, getting rid of the inaccuracy eraser and overall mentor and overall take young guy under my wing king, Adam Thielen. He did that with Teddy Bridgewater. He did that with Diggs and Jefferson when both of those guys were young and they were on the teams together. It really feels like Carolina needs that guy. And so that doesn't mean that, everybody has their price, but it's so hard for me to imagine that price is right and that they won't say, okay, a 2nd round pick then. And the Vikings are going to be left kind of, with their pants around their ankles. I don't see them doing that. I don't see that deal getting made. I do see it being discussed for sure. You'll make the call, but I feel like there's a big obstacle there. Another big one that people have said, okay, I am seeing people say KJ Osborne. People have been like, what about getting Stephon Diggs? You guys need to stop living in the past. Can we please stop suggesting only people that were on the Vikings before? Oh my God, there are more people. It's so weird how much I have seen the like Adam Thielen thing. Yeah, what about Treadwell? Yeah, I've seen that one a bunch too. Oh my God, like in all, like not ironic. If you're the kind of football fan that only watches Vikings games and doesn't care about the rest of the NFL, more power to you. But then you got to be like me and understand that like we don't know what's out there as well, and you need suggestions. But like I don't know, it feels like you're living in 2017. The year is over. The situations are different. Here's an idea that I actually saw. Braxton Berrios, returner and gadget guy. I like that idea. KJ Osborne, I think he's going to get cut, so maybe, but I don't know if he still does what you need him to. It seems like he declined a bit in New England, but maybe things just didn't work out for him in New England. And he needs to be part of this offense again. That'd be kind of nice. Some other big ideas, like splashy ideas. Some people say like, go get Tyreek Hill. I think the contract is a little bit rough for that, and you're already in a cap crunch next year. So I don't really want to take any big contracts. And I think that the size of guy that you're looking at here is the kind of dude you can get for a day 3 pick. So that maybe that's an older veteran, not unlike Adam Thielen. I just think that his situation in particular means that Carolina is going to value him more highly than that. But like you're looking for an older veteran. Really, what do you need here from the offense? You have Justin Jefferson, you have TJ Hawkins, and that's 2 of the 3 main pass catchers, and Aaron Jones is still here. So it's not like you have no offense at all, and you need to conjure one in August. You just need a guy that can run the routes correctly and catch the ball when it's thrown to him. You don't need a guy that can like smoke every man coverage and demand double teams and make all these big plays. Like if you can get that, great. But really, you just need like possession receiver. You just need the most normal receiver ever. That is not Tyreek Hill. I mean, look, Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson on the same team, that'd be quite the offense. Morally, I object to this, but that doesn't really go that far. So instead, I'll just say that is going to be a lot too expensive. I don't really need you. You need to paper over an issue for 3 weeks. You do not need to change the entire texture of the offense like it's some big emergency. By the time they go to London, this whole situation will have resolved itself, and you'll be back to Jefferson, Addison, Naylor, just like they intended. Tyler Boyd is another interesting one. Alan Lazard was an interesting one. I think the Alan Lazard idea, while he would not be very inspiring at all, this is not a guy that's going to go for more than 40 yards on 4 catches in a game, but he has experience playing for Matt LaFleur. That means the system. When I say run a basic, you know what that means. Run a basic at 15 yards. Okay, coach, I can do that. And he knows how to do that. And more or less, he's going to catch the thing. That might be all you need. And that might be something where you get to wait till cutdown day and see if a guy gets cut, and you don't have to spend a draft pick at all. But they did just acquire an extra 6th-round pick, and they can turn that into the wide receiver that they need. So if you want to look at this as a Rashad Bateman. Yeah. Tyler Johnson too. Let's get all the Minnesotans in here. You people are insane. Stampede. Oh, thank you for reminding me. I wanted to talk about this one because Romeo Doubs being rumored to be a trade or cut candidate is interesting. You'd have to wait for him to be a cut candidate, right? The Packers would never just willfully give you first right of refusal and then trade him into the division. Cause I don't think they hate the guy. I think it's just a room thing. But I think that he exists in that perfect place. The problem is he's a little bit of a bozo. He runs the wrong route sometimes. He's made like pretty like dope-headed mistakes in Green Bay that I think are precipitating this. And it reminds me a little bit of like Rager, right? Jalen Rager, who's going to run the wrong route and cause an interception. That's what I'm trying to avoid. So I don't know if I super love this. And now chat is just naming every Vikings receiver they can remember. I brought that on myself. That's fair. That's a fair hit. there's a lot of other names, Allen Robinson is one that's in here. These like old washed guys that like, I don't know if they have anything. And I'll leave this. And the last one I'll talk about is Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham's an interesting idea, not because I think he's any good at all anymore. I think we're well past that. He hasn't been in football for too long. But because he and Justin Jefferson have this special relationship, he's known Justin Jefferson since Jets was a kid. He was basically another big brother to him because he went and played at LSU with, I think it was Jordan Jefferson, his brother, who's the quarterback. Was that Jordan? So they would play in the backyard all the time, and it would just be really cute to see those guys on the team together. It just like emotionally, but I wouldn't expect a lot of production out of that. But hey, it would be like making Joe Flacco your quarterback. It's like, okay, I don't know how much ability is left at this stage in your career, but at least you like vaguely know what you're doing. So, all right. There's a lot of other receivers this can be. And what I'm not going to do is sit here and tell you this is my prediction. I have no prediction. Okay. But if and when it happens, we'll circle back to it then. And we'll do it right here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. I will see you all tomorrow. I've got still that Max Brosmer thing. Okay. I have my Patreon video up at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. I still want to go over that on this show, at least the broad strokes of it. Also, Pete's video came out. It's really good. And you can listen to yesterday's episode for my discussion with Pete Bursich about Max Brosmer. So you can check all of that stuff out. But I do want to circle back to that if I get time. But if there's more news, we'll go over it tomorrow as well. I'll see you all for whatever it is, rain, snow, or shine. And as always, Skol.